welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. On this episode, we're going to be talking about building a multi-generational workforce. But before I was begin, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe the podcast on all channels. And if you find any hearts, don't forget to follow me at Mr Bobble Official. You get to see some funny behind the clip scenes and other stuff that I'm doing outside the podcast. I'm very, very excited to welcome Dr Simon.
Hello.
Hello to our podcast. Myself and Dr Simon, we met about a year ago on a panel for Q5. Someone tagged us in on LinkedIn, and then I did a bit more research. I was like, would you please want to be on my podcast? And you were like, yeah,
voila.
Sure. And yeah, a few months later, here he is. And we've discussed, obviously, what would be a good topic. And I know you can talk about anything, but I think let's pick up on the first topic we had, which is building a multi-generational workforce, which kind of builds on from the HR and the recruitment podcast we've done kind of recently. So it kind of falls on quite well. But before we begin, Dr. Simon, please tell us a bit about yourself, your experience for our listeners.
Well, I'm from Barnsley and live in Barnsley, and set a Marxist capitalist business up 30 years ago, next year, which has worked remarkably well. So it uses capitalism to create value, but it builds in all of the externalities that capitalism doesn't, in terms of the environmental side of it and the kind of charity side, and then uses Marxism to share it out amongst the team that makes it. So it's a self-sustaining business model that's never borrowed a pound from anybody. And it's now about 20 million turnover. There's 43 of us. I've got an office in Barnsley, Bicester and London. We do sustainable marketing for many high street brands, as well as all e-commerce businesses, etc. So we've evolved from what was a print management company to start into a full services agency now, doing creative and data driven stuff. And outside of that, I'm a Barnsley Football Club trustee for their charity, and I also do a bit of politics with the Yorkshire Party, and I work with James Simpson and Prisons, and also with IDAS, which is a domestic abuse charity. So a kind of mixture of, as well as Dr Brooks University on EIRs and Connect Yorkshire. And so I've got a portfolio career, I'd say, these days.
How do you find the time?
These days, things kind of dovetail. There's an awful lot of, unbelievably, from that eclectic mix, there's an awful lot of overlap. So the skills that you develop in business, you can then apply into the other ones. Equally, the networks where you're trying to help build movements in one way or another, or scale things. It's much easier when you've got a big network of people to call on. Yeah. Because a lot of people may be quite tangential to what we do as a core, but actually somewhere in that there is always somebody I know who can help people. So it's more of a catalytic role than a Dewey heavy lifting role. You're connecting people together. Yeah. You're helping you've got a strategic objective in all of those different kind of entities. And then it's bringing the team in together, bringing the skills in together to deliver it faster, but crucially, doing as little as possible as you can.
How much of your team is in Barnsley?
About
you
half
mentioned
now.
London.
About half now. And it's growing quite quickly, which is great. I mean, obviously, it's Barnsley has got, to people outside of Barnsley, has got a 1970s reputation. But it's a staggering, if you bring people to Barnsley now, and the council has done a fantastic job of regen, and the town centre's fantastic, and all of this kind of stuff. People go, oh my God. And so whenever I bring people to Barnsley, they say, come to Barnsley, and like, you can see their heart sinking and their mouth getting dry. And then you take them round it, and we go out for have a meeting there, and we go out and have a walk around. And then I say, there's just one thing I'll ask you not to do when you're in Barnsley. I said, what's that? I said, don't look in an estate agent's window. Whatever you do, don't look in. And of course, the first thing that they do is is look at, oh my God. So we've had quite a few people move up from Bicester to Barnsley, because if you're wanting a family and you want to have a family house, you can have a great quality of life, and you can actually afford to own houses and stuff. So it's fantastic. And one of the things that we're wanting to do is get a business ambassadorial thing for Barnsley because it's actually, Barnsley played Huddersfield last weekend, which we lost. But a lot of Huddersfield fans, there's 4,500 Huddersfield fans there. And I've had from 4 people that I know who are Huddersfield fans say, I've not been to Barnsley for years. I cannot believe how much better it is now than Huddersfield is. Yeah. So it's... I strongly believe.
Probably a marketing campaign there.
No, seriously.
I'm being serious. It's
seriously.
If you're telling me it's that thing, it should be on the list for, the awards you get for most multicultural city. Bradford kind of won that one.
Yeah.
Barnsley should be up for that.
Honestly, you wouldn't believe it. And I've got people, obviously, I grew up in Barnsley and went down south for 32 years, moved back. All of the good things about living in Barnsley, the community, the friendliness, all that stuff, is still there. The muck's gone. Used to be, you couldn't, walking down when I used to walk down, the coal lorries, and there was, everybody was burning coal, so there's filth. You didn't think about it at the time, but now it's all gone, and it's lovely. Wow. And it's quite. It makes me very proud to be growing the team in Barnsley of talented people, bringing them together, and creating the new
community.
Absolutely.
Good on you. I have skin in this game because I am Barnsley born and bred. And
whereabouts?
I was born and brought up in Athersley.
Right.
And then
bless you.
We moved to...
Because that's not an easy part.
We moved to Suxton Common when I was sort of early teens maybe, moved to Suxton Common, which is very different to Athersley, so kind of very much seen both sides of it. But then I moved to Sheffield, which is not that far away.
No.
But I think in a lot of ways it kind of is like a slightly different
very
world.
Much, yeah.
And so when I came back to Barnsley for the first time in a few years, maybe 2.5 years ago, something like that, the town centre absolutely, totally transformed, and I'm quite kind of glad that I didn't see it while it was being transformed, because I came back and I lived in Barnsley up until I was maybe mid-20s, and standing in the centre of Barnsley going, I don't understand what used to be here. I can't figure out the logistics of it. Everything's moved and changed. It's not just like, they've put like some nice shops in those buildings. Like the buildings are gone. It's new buildings, and it all feels really different, and actually feels like there's something happening there. Like there's something being created in Barnsley, which is really like noticeable and significant.
The interesting thing was I was on Barnsley Economic Partnership for 7 years, and this was pre-lockdown, pre the development, but at the planning stage of it. And this was something that Barnsley Council got with a guy called Jed Shields, he was the marketing director of Sherwin-Williams, which he came up with, it does what it says on the tin. That was it. Which now is in... A brilliant guy. And he brought together a lot of business people to work with the council. One of them was a guy called Phil Durrell. And Phil was a retail specialist. And right at the early stages of this planning of this, he said, this is not a retail redevelopment. This is a multifunctional development. You need 3 economies, the morning economy, the afternoon and the evening. And we need to think of it in that way. You need to bring in activities. This is 13 years ago. You need to bring in activities, you need to bring in healthcare, you need to bring in all of the kind of... And so we were ahead of, in the planning, ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. Going back a little bit further, we were going to have Debenhams as the flagship. Look how that would have worked out. But because of that, and now you can see the rewards of that, we were one evolutionary step ahead of town centre redevelopment. And that's because of that public-private forum. And give them the due, the council really listened. And now you can see, if you look at it, you won't mean anything to people except yourself, the Alhambra Centre is now at the top floor of that is a healthcare centre. So instead of going up to the hospital, you bring people in. Well, of course, they have a coffee, they have a shop. It's easier for them to get to because they've got all the infrastructure. There's no parking issues and straight there. So it brings in the footfall in the morning, because that's quite usually, So it's thinking creatively, and it's all about collaboration. And at some stage, we'll get onto the multi-generational leadership. But this is a similar kind of thing, where you bring in disparate talent. Because whether you like to, you employ people or not, we have to treat all employees as volunteers, because the person that was in before, that headhunter-y kind of person, would whip them out if you don't. They'll churn it. You know, if you don't treat people, manage people as volunteers, in the same way that you need to think of them as a whole person. You need to understand their drivers. Yes, you pay them money, you know, unlike a voluntary role, but you need to understand what your value proposition to them as an employee is of any generation, so that you can finesse that in line with your strategy, your objectives. Now, the Barnsley Economic Partnership, we were all unpaid and what have you. And, you know, I was driving up to get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, 2.5 hours at the time I was living down south. But it's the same ethos. You need a disparate range, a breadth of experiences with a focus of what you're trying to achieve, and then you treat the person as if they're a volunteer, whether you pay them or not, because that gives you the buy-in and also the creativity and the openness to ideas and stuff. And the outcome of Barnsley Town Centre is a success story that is like no other. I mean, it's won awards. The council's the best council of the year. You know, this is Barnsley we're talking about. That most people don't give that perception, and it's an entity. An organisation is an entity. And I think the lessons, you know, in voluntary sector or in any, is transferable. But the approach that you need to take as an organisation, you know, your organisation is a bag of people. Yeah. A company is a bag of people. That's it.
You just said, obviously, you should treat your employees as like volunteers, and I think that leads us on straight into some key questions around multi-generational and building a multi-generational workforce. When we met,
you mean this is not just going to be a half-hour advert for Barnsley?
I wish it was. I wish it was. I think we should do one.
That's the first part of the podcast. Yeah. The Barnsley podcast. Bobble Barnsley.
Well, do two parts. Bobble Barnsley podcast.
There's some relevance there, isn't it? Because then imagine the difference between the kind of people that you've got working in your offices in Barnsley is different to the people that are working for you in London. You know, different outlook, different stage of their life, different experiences, and other things. So that is kind of relevant in this idea of, you know, different kinds of people within your workforce.
Absolutely.
And that was smooth, wasn't it, Manny? There we go.
I'll tell you as a segue, I can't believe how you did that. It's as if you've done this before.
It's as if I started my career working at a radio station in Barnsley. Who'd have thunk it? Which is a lie. It was actually the Barnsley Chronicle where I started my career before moving to a radio station in Barnsley. How do you get that right then? How do you get the balance between all the different people in your team who've all got different experiences, different stages of their life, different locations? You know,
well, the truth is
you described it as a bag of people, and it kind of is. It sounds like that really is like we talk about mixed bag with weather. That's a mixed bag of people in your team.
Absolutely.
How do you balance all that?
Well, if you think of what your business, most businesses, it's the people and aligning them to a purpose, and that purpose has got to be meaningful to the individual and to the organisation. Otherwise, you can't make money, and therefore you can't employ them anyway. So it's that alignment of purpose on 3 levels, and the first one is intellectual. The second one is emotional, and the third one is financial. And the financial is the outcome of the first 2. So understanding the individual's competitive advantage in whatever it is that they do, and finessing that over time, it evolves, is important. You give people more time to do the things that they're best at, because if you're good at something, you've got you aggregate that together. That's your competitive advantage as a business. But also the byproduct of that is people enjoy it, because you're taking out stuff that they're not very good at. You've got to be open with that. You know, I can't count. I'm terrible with numbers. I've never had any understates or lines. So I've never spent any time doing that. But I'm good at listening, and I'm good at communicating verbally. Not particularly good in writing, but and so you focus their role, and over time it evolves to maximise their intellectual value that they get, and you can give to them through training, continual professional development and stuff. That maximises their enjoyment. They enjoy life. You try and take out friction between their work and their life, and also you give them opportunities which take them outside the comfort zone in a nice way, not way outside, although some people really do like that, and that again is understanding your staff, or but pushing always. And it isn't always what they want. Sometimes people want to take and that's fine as well. You can take a back step or stay where you are. But we need, as an organisation, we need to keep pushing. So then you reorder people in that way. And then financially is the outcome from that. If you're dealing with people that are better than their peers, people want to give you work and want to work with you in a long term because you come up with ideas, you're empathetic, you know, the old sales adage, you've got two of them and one of those. You're listening and you're understanding what the customer is wanting, and they're intelligent enough to interpret it and get the right solution in place for them. And they're obviously enjoying it, and customers enjoy working with people that enjoy working. You can tell that immediately as soon as somebody's on the phone or any communication that they do with them. It's great, it's happy. And the outcome of that is you're financially rewarded for it because you've got a seamless link with the customer. You're aligned to them. It makes it much more operationally efficient. And if you're more operationally efficient, then you make better operating profit, because collaboration, trust is the most efficient way of working. There is no other. So if you've got that within, you're working within the organisation, and you can't give that outside if you haven't got it within. So openness, transparency, all the kind of stuff that you hear about is really important, because it drives better working practices, better improvement, better understanding of the opportunities out there, because people are more open with you outside the organ. So I've got a problem here. Is there anything you can do? Do you know anybody? And we'll just bring in people, even if they're nothing to do with what we do. We'll just say, well, there's in our network, we've got somebody who can help them. And that, again, it makes it a trusting relationship. And if you trust people, and if they trust you, that is the most efficient way of working.
But we've now got 5 different generations working in the same company, potentially, in some of the bigger organisations. We're now hiring people at different levels, people that have loads of experience, people that have no experience. And
we always have.
Views. Yeah.
We always have. It's just that we're more aware of it now than
okay, that's a really good way of looking at it, actually. So it's balancing between, because different work cultures, I mean, COVID changed everything. I liked, well, I'm not going to say I liked COVID. I'm saying I liked the outcome of which is it really pushed the digital transformational age.
Absolutely.
And I think that was like on the cusp that needed to happen.
Yeah.
It really enforced a lot of companies, especially SMEs, to really adopt technology, adopt the digital footprint, and adopt different practices and ways of working.
I would say not only SMEs, the amount of times I tried to get a video call with big companies, and they couldn't do it because it was lockdown. It couldn't do it, as in lockdown from their systems point of view, before COVID. And then immediately, I mean, literally for years, I've been saying, can we just hop on a call? I can't do it. We're not allowed in our organisation. And then within a week of this all happening, all of a sudden, you know, and before I'd be driving 16 hours to see 2 customers at the other end of the country, and I could do it on video with it, you know, within 2 hours. Crazy. I've had that. Yeah. So I think it wasn't just SMEs that could adopt it. I think they had the capability, they didn't have the agility. Yeah. And I think if you're going forward in terms of AI, you're going to be in exactly the same boat until people realise that it's here, it should be embedded in everything that you do, then you are going to flounder. And this is what going on to multi-generational workforce. The beauty of young people coming into there, and the young of bright brain, and that doesn't anything to do with your external. There are two brain ages, you know, your brain and your body, the 2 ages are not correlated. So if you've got people who are young-brained, then they will be much more open to the adoption of AI. Old-brained people of whatever age, they can be 20 and be an old brain. I don't do that. I can't be. You know, that closed mindset will find it much more difficult to thrive in going forward. So it's not a should I have a multi-generation. It's you've got to have, and I wouldn't think about the face of the person, you know, colour, age, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the curiosity that they've got within. Yeah. It's the flexibility of brain and approach to things that are the most important, that malleability and creativity from this new opportunity that is coming now, not in the future. You're already using it. every day because it's embedded within what we do in one of those or within whatever. But within our organisation, there is an impact. And that's where we shy away from it, because people have got roles, and certainly a big proportion of their role, that may be automated in a day. So what do you do with those people? Well, they've got to evolve into, there's a kind of Boston matrix, where you've got people where you need personal empathy and you need creativity. That's human. That's what humans are really, really good at. Everything else will be, to a greater or lesser degree, automated, unless you're using your fingers for hairdressing or whatever. Yeah. So in a brain work, those are the two areas that we need to develop the skill set of our team into: creativity and also empathy, human contact, because that computers can't do that. Everything else, to a greater or lesser degree, they will take over using AI.
I've done a lot of talking about actual AI and in the workplace. My viewpoint is taking us from data insights to execution quicker within digital marketing. I'm in the process of finalising my own proprietary tech around this, which is bringing together all of digital marketing into one, not replacing the function, but exactly how you just explained it, which is automating the tasks that are taking way too long and wasting clients' time and money.
Absolutely.
Because if we can provide better value, because we can focus on the execution quicker, because the execution is still required. Someone's still got to go into Google Ads and update the headlines and do it. But imagine not having to spend hours before analysing the data, understanding which headlines to do.
Absolutely.
It's all there for you to follow. It means you're more reactional. It means you're more doing of the work, and data analysis is boring. Yeah. Let's be honest with you. It's a skill set that not many people have, or if they do have to acquire it, it's not a fun task to do. No. And I see this as like, and this is where I kind of praise the younger generation to a degree, is it's almost like, I think Bill Gates said it, I'd rather hire a lazy person than a non-lazy person, because a lazy person will find how to do that task at the minimum level point to do it, and at most cost effective than somebody else who's really, really efficient. And he goes, because it's going to save time, money. I'm not saying the young generation are lazy. I'm saying they know what they want. I think they've seen the previous multi-generations in terms of where it's all work, work, work. Yeah. I mean, I look at my parents. My mum had 3 jobs, all manual labour jobs. My dad worked in a factory for years. I've seen my older siblings just work, work, work. And I even started work at a young age. I mean, from paper boy all the way to working part-time at the age of 16. I'm 35 now. And all I can remember from most of my life is, even though I had a good childhood, my other life has just been work, work, work. Yeah. And they see that and they're like, no, I don't want that. Well, and they're like, they want a good work-life balance.
It's quite interesting. I did the same. I had a job since the age of 12, working in a garage, which you wouldn't be able to do now, like mechanicking and stuff. And I had some rallies with me this weekend, and their 14-year-old is making £1 squillion on eBay and buying stuff out of cash converters and charity shops, and then selling it on eBay through his mum's account. Now, what a creative, great kind of that's a smarter way of doing it. So you can do that, and still have a life, and you're not having to work down the pit or do whatever the equivalent would be, paper around to get freezing cold and all that, this kind of stuff. And
chased by dogs.
Absolutely. So, they evolve, the roles evolve, and it's much more flexible. You can do whatever you want to do, wherever you want to do it, if you're using that. Yeah. Now, if you're using this, because that's where you need to be geolocated, if you're doing hairdressing, if you're doing physio or whatever it is. But for those of us that are in a position where 89% of our value add is on this, we've now got the flexibility to work more or less where we want. And it's interesting listening to younger people, that non-direct vocational kind of benefits that you get are so important. So the discount card for getting Airbnb cheaper, the flexibility to be able to work up to 6 weeks a year anywhere in the world, as long as you can be within the work hours, you'll be awake in the work hours that we want to do. Those are effectively zero cost to an organisation, but are really important to the young people because they've grown up with that flex.
That brings me on to the next question, because I agree with all this, but I think there's some companies that have it's like we talk about, large companies could have easily adopted video calling
Absolutely.
and elements instantly.
It should have.
SMEs kind of like saying, right, we have to do this because it's the only way to survive. But when you've got teams of like, you know, you said you're a team of like 40, so you're still classed as a SME. I'm classed as still technically a micro company because we're a team of 7, excluding our contractors. In terms of staff, it's like when you're smaller, although these are elements that are pretending, it's harder. I think it's harder to implement that stuff until you've got a good company size where you can hire more staff and people can pick up the slack there and there and about. So if you understand what I'm trying to say, is like once you've got a bigger team, you can implement more of these elements, which, like you said, cost nothing to do. But I think when you're a smaller company with small revenue,
Yeah, it is.
I think they're the ones that struggle. And then you're competing with teams of like 50 to 100 and staff that want that at that level, but you're trying to get there. So I think size of team plays a big role in terms of actually offering that. Just from my experience, because we offer like 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, etc., and have flexibility around that. We give a lot of incentives that a lot of big agencies don't offer. But I just don't. I mean, this is me personally. I wouldn't be as comfortable with a small team when I've got a manager and a junior who's there to train up that manager junior. There's some things you get when you're physically there in the meeting.
I totally agree, and that
difficulty.
I think that osmosis it does get lost, and that we're all everyone is going through that kind of juxtaposition. You know, the old between working from home and completely flexibly, and particularly with people who are either retraining, as in moving within the organisation, may have a level of competence in one area but need to learn another one, or young people. Typically coming into the workplace for the first time, it's incredibly difficult for them to get the social norms of a workplace, to understand, how you work. You know, if you've never worked in an office environment and there's nobody there to train you, it's difficult to know.
Do you think there's a bit of an internal cultural divide then with different multi-generations, because the older generation is more used to specific social norms in terms of they're used to the 9 to 5, coming in, having their lunch, usually generally coming into a shirt and tie. You know, that's what was classed back then, what was a good employee. Now we know with how we work. I mean, I'm on a podcast in a hoodie, you know what I mean? But when I'm at an event later, I'll have the package to get into a shirt and tie. I'm not going to be in a shirt and tie all day. The flexibility around being dressed for the point or the event or the occasion at the time, and that flexibility is key. But do you think there's a little bit divide there between the younger generations and then the older generations of workforce in terms of like, well, we never did that. But how do you manage that from a CEO perspective?
To be honest, it's always evolved.
Yeah.
It has always evolved. I mean, we always look at the beauty of loving history is that you realise actually the context for why you are here and the changes that have gone. If you look back at the 1950s to the 1960s, we go, oh my God, flower power, and everything changed. Yeah. And then 60s to 70s, it was totally different. The 70s to 80s, and. So this is a continuum. This is a constant evolution of the way that work integrates with society, how organisations are created, and the structures of them, and the remuneration of them, and the reward in an intellectual, emotional and financial way. How that it will continue to evolve.
I think, did you see the comment from JP Morgan's CEO, which has gone viral, in terms of his opinion he gave on people working from home?
Was it disparaging?
Yeah, he wasn't in favour of it at all. And he was like, you tried to call someone on a Friday, there's just not effing there. And I don't disagree with it. Everybody should be back in the office. And it's a hot topic when you look at social and you look at LinkedIn right now. So looking at multi-generational, some people prefer to be in the office. I prefer to be in the office more than I work from home. If I'm at home, I'm looking at it from a time perspective. For example, yesterday, do I spend that 30 minutes getting to the office, then to spend 30 minutes getting into town, or do I start earlier, get my work done, be a bit more flexible and getting ready, go straight into town for 30 minutes, and then that's better. It saves me 30 minutes in terms of an extra commute. I'm being more productive that way by spending the first half of my day at home and then going into town for my meetings as opposed to going to one location. It's like you, with video calling now, why do I need to be on the other side of the UK where it's all about efficiencies and time? I think there's no way of going back to 5 days a week in the office. I just don't think it's going to happen. Like you said, we're evolving. I mean, I know older generations prefer it, but that's just not the norm anymore. I don't think we can even hire on that basis anymore in terms of getting people in full time. I know some companies are doing it, but I just feel like with the advancements of technology, AI and everything, it's just going to be right. I won't be surprised if in 5 years' time I have a global team and just a couple of spaces where you can pop into if you want to collaborate. I think that's where Bobble's going into 5 years' time, is a global team, but they all communicate through digital.
A micro multilateral. Totally. And the talent is all over the place. But we're looking as marketing services companies in a very narrow sphere. You know, if I was JCB Engineering, I wouldn't be thinking that. If I were, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think you can say the genus of work is going to be changing that way. And certainly there's a lot of stuff like, you know, if you look at Formula One, they're all knowledge workers, but they're deeply collaborative. Everything about them. And also there's that osmosis, that absorption of different ideas and things which have to be together. So I do think it's quite specialist to whatever it is that you're doing. And there'll be certain times that like we get everybody together in, you know, once a month and, you know, throughout the business. It's lovely. It's a great thing to do as well. And that knits the team together, because you get to know people who you may not see one day to another. So there's a balance to be had, and I think every organisation will find its own balance, and the talent that you want will look at it more objectively than they did before. I think if they want a more flexible lifestyle, then they will take that choice when they come to move or stay with a business. If I was a young person wanting to learn the ropes, I'd want to be in the office. I'd want to specialise or specify in, I need to be in the office with somebody who I can learn off for at least 3 days a week. Yeah. Because otherwise I'm not going to get... I
think that's the bit I try to specify with the junior levels, is like, right, you've got to make yourself... And this is what I specify with mid-level management, is like, look, just because you know the stuff, and we're digital, so we can work, as long as we're connected to the internet, we can service our clients anywhere in the world. We can have video calls with them. It's that collaboration that, as we just talked about, it's that knowledge share.
Yeah, and also we tend to go linear if we're on our own. Whereas if you these days in a Venn diagram, it's the difference in that middle of the three loops. It's not about you. It's all about maybe an external partner, maybe an internal. It's sense checking it. It's thinking creatively and laterally, rather than linearly. Because we can all do. I mean, I can do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never run out of things to do. But if you're wanting inspiration and creativity, you've got to get that breadth of people in, and that quite often is better face to face, and a lot of these people may not be from within your organisation. So going out and seeing people, mentoring is a really powerful tool both ways. It doesn't matter whether you're the mentor or the mentee, you both learn out of it. And so internal and external mentoring rather than management is a really powerful tool that we can use.
I was told as a CEO or as a business owner or entrepreneur, you should have 3 people in your life. You should have someone who's been there, done it, mentoring you. You should find someone who's at the same path as you, could be in the same industry, different industry, but trying to build a business or having the same challenges as you. And then eventually you should be able to pass that on to someone. So you're learning from someone who's been there doing it, you're sharing challenges with someone who's going through it, and then eventually, have you learned that? Are you able to pass that on to the next generation? I think that's how it should work in the workforce as well, in terms of like, especially when juniors are coming in.
It is.
They need people that can train them, and then people at mid-level should have people above them. Doesn't matter what age they are.
No.
You know, in terms of guiding and mentoring them.
It's interesting, if you ever go to Silicon Valley, which is now a bit jaded compared with, you know, it was the place to go. It was a hateful place, full of squalor and homelessness, and, you know, people with lots of money and a lot of people with very, very little. But the 2 things I took away from it was one was the paying it forward. People who have made it in Silicon Valley very much invest their time, often for free, with people who are trying to make it. It's almost a passage of rights, you have to. So that mentoring ethos is absolutely key to it. whereas we get money and then fuck off to buy a farm and go and and shoot things or whatever fish or whatever. And that was a real, that for me, there was literally nobody that people cited had just gone off and gone on a boat around the world and never to be seen again. But the second thing is they reinvest some of their money into risky ventures. They feel, they'll put money in gilts or whatever, so that they're not going to be broke, but they'll have quite a significant amount, and will be working with people with lots of money, as in advisors in venture capitals and stuff. So, and I think that's something that we, as people who have experience, should be able to give that for free, and that's where things like Connect Yorkshire are quite useful, of connecting people like that together. So we're doing it in a little bit. I'm glad to
be part of Connect Yorkshire as a member. We did do some really good events. Just to summarise, because I know we've got a bit of a hard stop, is just last note for our listeners is, what do you see the future of the workplace looking like? If you could give one prediction, so if we were to look back in a year's time or 2-3 years' time.
Flexible, automated and creative.
3 key words.
Good summaries. My takeaway from this, by the way, Silicon Valley out, Barnsley in.
Absolutely. We have got our digital,
Barnsley,
seam.
Make that
we have got the seam, it's got 2 and it's expanding now. And that we were the first person into the digital media centre in Barnsley, and I opened the place with Sir Michael Lyons of the BBC, chair of the BBC, who opened it, and we were the first people, because collaboration, a bit like this space here, collaboration works as long as you're open-minded and flexible and trust. Because just talking earlier on, you've got customers in here, and and also they've got skill set that you can aggregate together to offer to your customers, which is great. And I personally think it's more exciting than that. Take outside the macro political nonsense that's going on. If we focus on what we've got, actually, it's more exciting than it's ever been, and less barriers to trade than it's ever been before. So, I think it's exciting times.
Please invite us down to Barnsley.
Oh, any time. 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
You'll be there.
I'll literally train down.
Bit less if it's in my Tesla.
Big thank you, definitely. Thank you to Dr. Simon for joining us.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate the time you've given us, and that means hopefully some really good insight for you listeners. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Mr Bobble Official for some of the behind the scenes clips. We look forward to bringing you back more episodes. There's a few episodes now coming out whilst I'm in Dubai, so you'll see a nice change of scenery, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you very much.